Hi, I'm Darrin Peppard. Welcome to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, the podcast dedicated to today's hardworking leader. Join me every Sunday for leadership insight, inspiration, and a little pep talk to keep you rolling down your road to awesome. Hello and welcome into episode 51 of the Leaning into Leadership podcast, a solo episode today on leaning into leadership. I want to spend some time today reflecting and looking forward. I want to talk about my goals from 2022, the successes, the shortcomings. I want to talk about some goals I have for 2023. And most importantly, I want to talk about how as leaders, we have to be willing to look back, look forward, be honest with ourselves, be transparent with those around us when it comes to our goals and it comes to our success. And we're going to get to all of that right after these messages. Hey leaders, let me tell you a story. It's the story of my first year as a high school principal. I will tell you, I was exhausted, I was overwhelmed, and I lived my life breathing through a snorkel because my head was so far underwater and I didn't think there was a way out. I mean, I was a mess. The 40 feet that it was to move from my assistant principal office down to the principal's office might as well have been a 400-mile trek. I was just absolutely putting in crazy hours. I was trying to do it all, like trying to answer everybody's question, thinking I always had to be the smartest one in the room and I had to solve everybody's problems. We're talking severe Superman syndrome here, folks. Every day was fire after fire, and all I accomplished was putting out fires. Forget about leading. I was simply trying to survive. Now, after working with a leadership coach, I really was able to get things figured out, get my head from being a firefighter to actually being a leader. But it took work, and I discovered some things that really mattered. And that's why I've created Walk in Your Purpose, 5 mindsets to level up your leadership, a free ebook that you can have today at no cost. Just go to walkinyourpurpose.roadtoawesome.net/ebook to download your free copy. Again, that's walkinyourpurpose.roadtoawesome.net/ebook. It's time for you to walk in your purpose, to find joy in your job, and to be the leader you always knew that you could be.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get on to the episode.
Today, I just want to have a conversation with you. I don't have a guest on the show. In this particular episode, what I want to do is I want to talk about looking back and about looking forward. You see, the best leaders are the ones who are willing and intentional about taking the time to reflect on the work that they've done and to really think about where they are now and where they want to be. I'm talking about not only goal setting, but about being really intentional about the structures that are within those goals. How do you ensure that a goal is of quality? How do you know you can reach a goal? How do you know you can even measure a goal? It's one thing to say, wow, I want to lose 20 pounds this year, or I want to be in better shape. If you think about the two goals, at least by saying losing 20 pounds, it's measurable. It's something you can actually quantify and actually put a finger on, put a number on it. When you simply say, hey, I just want to be in better shape, it's really hard to quantify that, and it's really hard to measure it. When I think about the goals that I set for myself in 2022, as I'm reflecting on them, I'm finding that I had some goals. I did a really nice job in terms of how I could measure them. How are they quantifiable? And some other goals, well, let's just say I fell short of the mark. Now, let me preface by saying this. I am an avid podcast listener. Not only do I have a podcast, but I love listening to podcasts. I keep finding more and more podcasts that just absolutely speak to me. But I will tell you, in the last 2 years, the podcast that has become my absolute favorite is Jon Acuff's All It Takes Is a Goal. Now, if you haven't checked out Jon Acuff, that's Jon Acuff, Jon Acuff, All It Takes Is a Goal. It's an incredible podcast that really shares some incredible insight, not only in how do you achieve a goal, but how do you maybe set your mind up for finding ways to be successful? How do you allow yourself to have grace? How do you forgive yourself when things don't necessarily go the way you intended? How do we allow ourselves as human beings to understand that it's just as much about the journey as it is about the destination? Well, in today's episode, I really want to get into that. I want to talk about how Jon Acuff's podcast has really inspired me, and specifically the most recent episode that I just listened to yesterday. In that particular episode, Jon did something very similar. He recapped his goals for 2022, and he talked about what has worked and what didn't. It inspired me to really do some deep reflection. So much so that even this week's blog was focused on what were the books that I had read this year. What were my favorite books? Both books I read for pleasure, books I read professionally, books I read to grow and stretch myself as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. And as I was putting together that blog piece, what I was discovering was I need to be more intentional about the books that I read. I think I have a pretty good balance, to be honest with you, and I'll put the link to the blog in the show notes if you want to go check it out. But what I discovered was I've done a really good job of reading for pleasure, and I've done a fairly good job of reading professionally and in the business space, but I think I need to stretch myself more. I think I need to push myself more so that I'm reading even more, so that I'm discovering even more, because ultimately, for me to learn even more, that's going to be the number one place where I'm going to go. We will return to the Leaning into Leadership podcast in just a moment. But first, let me ask you a question. Have you ever said to yourself, man, I should write a book? Well, if you have, then let me ask you another question. What's holding you back? What keeps you from taking the step that moves you from, I have an idea about a book, to, I am a published author? From experience, I would bet it's probably you're wondering who would even want to read a book that I wrote. Maybe you're questioning the idea. Is it unique enough? Is it valid enough? Is it good enough to be a book worthy of having published? Hey, as a best-selling author myself, I can tell you most writers have had the exact same feelings at some point in time during their writing journey. Here at Road to Awesome, we believe in cultivating leaders by elevating voices and promoting positivity. And a part of that work is publishing books for educators by educators. Go to roadtoawesome.net and hit the Contact Us button to set up a free, no-obligation conversation about your book idea. Hey, educators, we've all had incredible experiences. We all have amazing stories, and every one of them deserves to be told. Go to roadtoawesome.net, hit the Contact Us button. Let's have that conversation about your book idea. And now, back to the Leaning into Leadership podcast. So here we go with 2022, a little bit of looking back and a little bit of looking forward. When I think about goals, when I think about accomplishments, shortcomings, and areas that I can build on, it just keeps taking me back to what it is the great leaders really do. You know, recently I was reading on Twitter, and a friend of mine, Wade Stanford, shared this particular quote. It is nearly impossible to have your best idea the first time you think about something. The most likely way to uncover important insights is to frequently revisit a problem. The longer you're in the game, the more ideas bubble up to the surface. Time unlocks insights. Brilliant words, Wade, and thank you for sharing that, because, again, it takes me back to the ones who really are successful in leadership, the ones who are truly doing great work, are the ones that always look back, but are also looking forward. I'm amazed when I look back on 2022 at some of the different things that I've learned over the course of this year. Some of the things that I've learned just specifically in the business space. As an entrepreneur, so much of this is learn on the fly. I don't have a degree in business. I have 3 degrees in education. And while all of that's well and good, that has not prepared me to run my own business. I've had to learn and lean on a lot of other really smart people much smarter than I am in that particular space. It's amazing how many people are out there who just genuinely want to help. Now, certainly there are those few that are out there who are really only in it for themselves, but so many people, folks, and this is one of my big takeaways from 2022, is there's so many people who are there and willing to help you if you're just willing to listen, if you're just willing to spend a little bit of time with them. I have so many conversations day in and day out with people who I've gotten to know over the course of the last year or two and people who are new into my circle. And I'm so grateful for every single one of them. I also look back and think about some of the incredible things I learned during 2022 from the people who are right there in the trenches, leading in schools and in their districts. As I reflect, it's not the same role that it was when I was a principal. It can't be. Schools have evolved. It's been over 5 years since I stopped being a high school principal or went into recovery as a high school principal. The job has changed, folks, and I know that. But I understand and I appreciate that, and I really have embraced that working with some of the leaders that I'm supporting this year. The individuals who I'm coaching, the district teams that I'm coaching, I've learned a lot from them about how the role has changed, how the expectations of parents have changed, and how the expectations and needs of our staff have changed. So let's get into some reflection, some real direct reflection. When I listened to John Acuff's podcast, again, like I said, he dove right into talking about his goals. So I want to do that with you as well. I want to share with you, I'm going to be super transparent here, and I'm going to tell you some things that really, they're going to be very liberating. But at the same time, heck, in some places they might even be an overshare. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. But I'll tell you, here's some goals that I had in 2022, and I want to let you know how I did. So number one, specific to the business and really specific to the speaking side of what I do, I wanted to have 20 speaking engagements. And I went back through, have done the math, and I actually fell a little bit short of this goal. I had 16 speaking engagements. Now, in multiple of those engagements, I spoke multiple times. So I think I was a little ambiguous here. Did I want to speak 20 times? Because if I count podcasts, not even my own, I far and away exceeded 20. Was I talking about full fee paid gigs? I don't know. I wasn't specific enough with this particular goal. But based on what I believe I was meeting, I fell just a little bit short. Like I said, just a couple of engagements short of that one. And that's one that I'm going to see come back in 2023 with another goal there, and I'm going to try to be a little bit more specific with that. I had a goal to have 5 great clients, and I've exceeded the number of that. I have more than 5 great clients. But again, I think where I fell short here was I wasn't very specific. What exactly does that mean to be a great client? Several of you that are listening are clients of mine. Yes, you're great clients. But how do I quantify that? It's not necessarily based on revenue. It's not based on how much people are paying me. It really should be based on what growth are my clients making? Am I making a difference for them? Am I seeing them really, truly grow and get better either as a team or as an individual? And it has been wonderful to see that, and I'm definitely experiencing that. I will have to have several of you on the show because I'd love to hear, in your words, the growth that you're experiencing that we're doing this year. And I think there's also a lot of listeners who would love to hear from those that I'm coaching and just kind of get an idea of what exactly that looks like and what it feels like. So we're going to have to make sure that happens. So challenged me with that. Those of you who are among my many great clients really push me on that so that I can get you back here on the podcast. Another goal that I had for, again, this is still with the business, but I wanted to see us get 10 books to market. So with Road to Awesome, one of the branches of our business is a publishing business. I think most of you are aware of that, but if you're not, Road to Awesome does in fact publish books. And it's actually my wife, Jessica, who is the editor, art director, the creative director. She does so much of that. Probably 90% of the work we do in publishing books comes right out of her work. And it maybe wasn't the best idea to put a number on it, but I like for us to have an idea of what we want to have accomplished. We do have a book that's going to drop later this week, so we'll have one additional book in this particular calendar year. So it looks like we're actually going to have 8 new books to market this year. Our intent was 10. Looks like we're going to come in at 8, and that's okay. I mean, I really am okay with that one. But again, it's a goal that numerically we fell a little bit short of that one. There was a revenue goal. I didn't put a flat number on our revenue goal. Hey, we've got to have X number of dollars in revenue, but rather my goal was to hit 6 figures in revenue this year. And I figured for a new business, hitting 6 figures in revenue was probably a lofty goal. But I actually am proud to say that we've achieved that. We have gone over the 6-figure mark in really our first full year doing this work. So I'm excited about that. And I feel good about that, but I think there's better ways for me to measure that particular piece. In speaking with my business coach and with the business mastermind group that I work with, we should be thinking about things like profit margins. We should be thinking about things in terms of what our overall percentage growth looks like, and not just, hey, I want to hit this particular number. But nonetheless, for a goal and how we wrote it, we achieved that one. Now, here's a goal that is an example of writing a goal that just is so vague. Essentially, what I stated here was I wanted proof of concept of the work that we're doing at Road to Awesome. So what I really meant by that was, is this going to work? You know, am I going to have to go get another job? Am I crazy for thinking that I can go full time as a speaker, as a consultant, and as somebody who publishes books? And I guess if proof of concept is that we're going to keep doing it and no, I'm not running out and getting a job, then I guess we have proof of concept. But the way that it was written, pretty vague. So I've got to get a little bit better there. I definitely need to get better there. I had a goal for completing a blog post and a podcast every week in 2022. I will tell you, I took a week off at Thanksgiving intentionally on the blog, but based on the way the goal is written, that means I failed. The podcast, every single week since January 15th, the date that this thing launched, we've had a new episode. So that has definitely been successful. And honestly, the blog, even though, yes, I took an intentional week off, we have had a new post every single week. And we've seen great engagement from both of them too, which I really appreciate. Man, hats off to people who do that work around creating content on a regular basis. What I have discovered is I have to be so intentional with my time to be able to ensure that that's done. Now, it's one thing with the podcast, because for those of you who've been on the show or maybe are scheduled to be on the show, or heck, if you're interested in the show, or interested in being on the show, reach out, let me know. I do a lot of batch recording. So there are weeks where I will record 12, 14 episodes over the course of 10 days, and then stretches of time for 2 weeks. Like, honestly, what's coming up as we go into this Christmas holiday, I'm not going to record anything for 2 weeks, and I'm going to enjoy it. It's nice to be able to batch load a lot of podcast episodes, because then I can kind of decide, hey, which is the best fit week by week by week. But man, back to my original point, the people who create content, massive amounts of content on a regular basis, man, my hat is off to you. It is not easy, and it is not for the faint of heart. Every single day, every single week, coming up with what are those ideas? What are the things I really want to talk about? What's the message I really want to share with people? How do I want to help principals and assistant principals and superintendents? How do I want to lift them up? How do I want to make sure that a teacher doesn't quit this week? How can I be that person that inspires them to keep moving forward? And there are days where the ideas just don't come. And there are other days where the ideas come like all at once. And so I really have learned that I have to take advantage of that. And as a result, I am being successful in completing the blog and the podcast on a weekly basis. So I'm really happy about that. Here's one that's not related to the business, but it's a goal that my wife and I both had this year. For those of you who don't know, when we moved here to Omaha, Nebraska, we decided we wanted an old home. We're in a historic neighborhood here in Omaha. Our house is 97 years old. We're really excited about the house. We love the old woodwork and all that kind of stuff. But one thing we didn't think about when we were looking at the house, and this is definitely lesson learned, and if you go shopping for an old house anytime soon, keep this one in mind. Take a good look at the windows. You see, the windows in this house, they were original. And at 97 years old, that's a little old for windows, folks. So we've had to put all brand new windows in the home, which was one of our goals. But we also had no access to our backyard. It's kind of an interesting quirk in the way the house was built, but there was no access to the backyard. You had to go out the side door, come around through the gate. And so for almost a year, we've been carrying our 2 dogs from the side of the house into the backyard every time they need to use the bathroom. It's kind of monotonous. So goal accomplished. We have a new sliding patio door that got installed in October. We have built, we're calling it a great set of stairs. It's a deck, but we've gotten that built out back, and now we have that access to the backyard. So it might be silly, it might be a small thing, but it's a goal that we've accomplished. And I'm going to say this too. When you are thinking about your goals, when you're reflecting on the work and the accomplishments you had over the course of a year, don't set those personal things aside. Those are equally important. And if you can get those things accomplished, man, that's awesome. My goals for 2023, I want to come back to those in just a minute because there's this other thing. You know, it's become kind of trendy, and I've been doing it for the last several years, and that's having one word for the year. And I will tell you, in 2022, my one word was impact. And I think it's a great word. Again, it's hard to measure. How do I measure impact? You know, I mean, have I had impact? I think so. When I speak with or work with schools or districts, when I talk with the individuals that I coach, whether that's executive leadership coaching or results coaching that I do with Brandon Beck, it's clear that there's impact. It's clear that they have moved forward or have achieved something that they've really wanted to do. A handful of them wanted to write a book, and they've all done that this year. A handful of them wanted to really grow as instructional leaders, or they wanted to grow professionally in terms of how they can listen and support everybody around them. And I know that it's worked. Several times when I work with schools, I get feedback from them. In fact, almost always, I get feedback from them. And it usually comes later down the road. And it might be an image they send to me where somebody created a bulletin board that's Road to Awesome. Just a couple of days ago, one of the schools that I worked with in August this year, they sent me a couple of pictures. You see, they were taken in by something small in my presentation where I talked about the work we did at Rock Springs High, where instead of our kids sitting on the floor, our maintenance workers built benches. I mean, tons of benches for everywhere in that school. And all of a sudden, the kids weren't sitting on the floor. And the kids were sitting up. You know, if we want them to act like adults, let's treat them like adults. Well, this particular school here in Nebraska was enamored by that idea. And I got a text from their superintendent just a couple of days ago, a couple of pictures with the benches they had built and some kids sitting on the benches. It's a little thing. It's a little thing. But number one, it's culture builder. And number two, it reinforces that impact. Again, measuring impact is so difficult. It's vague. You know, I think about a group of kids that I worked with just outside of Detroit back in November, and the conversations that we had for about an hour. And their principal emailing me the very next week saying, oh my gosh, my kids they're just overflowing with ideas of things they want to do in their school because they want to make a difference. You know, we brought 8 new authors into the world this year at Road to Awesome. I think that's making impact. The impact on myself, folks, my definition of success is completely different. I mean, just if you're still listening to me, and I hope you are, you probably heard this theme kind of throughout this about how I know I have to be more specific about how I set and measure my goals. But I will tell you my definition of success when I go back to when I first started as an educator, or maybe when I first started as an assistant principal or as a principal, my definition of success was so much more tied to a title. It was so much more tied to how much my paycheck was. Now, to me, it's so much more about the impact I can have on other people. You know, that's success. You know, if we truly, truly live by the tenets of the road to awesome, which are, number 1, let go of the things you can't control, focus on things you can. Number 2, that we rise by lifting others. And number 3, that we have the opportunity to change the world one conversation at a time. When I think about success through those 3 lenses, when I think about impact through those 3 lenses, it's clear that we're having impact. We just need to do a better job of actually defining that. Now, let's talk about goals for 2023. I'm going to be real honest with you here and be real vulnerable again. But revenue goal, I want to increase our revenue by about 20%. See, even right there, I've got to change my language. I said by about. That's not true. I want to increase overall revenue by 20% here at Road to Awesome. I've got some individual goals, though. Some goals for the family. This is something I learned from John Acuff in that podcast link. I'm going to put that in the show notes. I want you to go listen to that episode of John Acuff, All It Takes is a Goal podcast, because it made me rethink my goals. I mean, you heard me. All I talked about in my other goals, other than the sliding glass door, were all business-related goals. So here's some goals I have for 2023. I mentioned the revenue piece, but I want to make 3 retreats with my wife happen. Not vacations. I mean, they'll be kind of vacations, but actually where we go away, just the 2 of us, and we can spend some time away from the office, away from home, talking about work, talking about us as a couple, talking about us as a family, but also where we can have some vacation time. And I want that to happen 3 times. She and I have already talked about this too. That's an important element. I can't write a goal without her being a part of it. I want to repaint the entire inside of our house. During Thanksgiving week, my wife and I had brought home some different sample colors, and she and my daughter just started putting these samples up on the walls. So now we have these weird patchy looks in a few of the rooms in our house. So we need to get the painting done. So 2023, we are going to get the inside of the house painted. I mentioned the sliding glass door. We now need to completely restructure our backyard because of having this new access. I want to get that done. I want to close all 3 rings on my Apple Watch 260 times in 2023. Now you may be wondering, where did I come up with that number? If I average 5 times a week, that'll be 260 times. That's actually about 71% of the time. All right, but here's the thing. If I say 5 times a week, and there's a week where I only get 4, I've already failed in the goal. But if I look at it more longitudinally, if I think about it over the course of the entire year, if I can get 260, which still is an average of 5 times a week, now I got a chance. I want to play 30 rounds of golf in 2023. I'm an avid golfer, and if you played with me, I'm terrible. I mean, terrible, folks. At this point in my life, I'm not getting better. I think I have plateaued. I don't even know if there's a handicap number high enough to say what my handicap is, but I still love to play the game. I love to get out and play. I love to get out and walk the golf course. It's so peaceful. It's so serene. And 30 rounds a year, I don't think is out of the realm of the possibility. So I want to make that happen. I do want to increase the number of speaking gigs I have by a minimum of 5. I'd like to see us move up another 5 speaking gigs. I'd like to increase our overall coaching by at least 3 clients. I want to visit my parents at least 6 times. I live about 6.5 hours from my parents right now. And, like a lot of people at my age, my parents are getting older. And while they're doing quite well, I still want to make sure I'm there to support them and help them out. Now, I'll tell you, since the summer, I think I've been to their place 4 times. I'll be going again next week. I'm looking forward to being able to be around them as much as possible, because you never know how much longer your parents are going to be around. So I want to be around my parents at least 6 times in the coming year. As a reader, and I mentioned this, and I shared that I had said some things about how many books I had read in this week's blog post. But what I want to do is I want to read a minimum of 50 books in this coming year, a minimum of 50 books. As a professional, some of the next steps that I'd like to see happen in our consulting work is launching our own leadership mastermind. It's something I've been working on. I've been working on the structure for it, but I need to just make it happen. It can't just be, hey, coming in 2023, I'm going to do this. I need to just make it happen. Absolutely do. There's so many great examples of masterminds out there. I want to make it unique and make it my own, but I also don't feel like I have to reinvent the wheel. So I just need to simply go. I just simply need to do it. Sometimes the most powerful step we can take is first step. And that's one of those things where I just need to take that first step. I've been working on and talking about launching what I'm calling the Principals Academy, kind of your one-stop shop for all things principal growth and development. And I need to make that happen. I have the website somewhat ready to go, at the content somewhat ready to go. Now it's about just taking that next step. And honestly, launching the mastermind is going to be one of those big key steps. The final goal I want to talk about is actually back to kind of a personal fitness goal. And I can tell you right now, the way it's written on my Remarkable here in front of me sets me up for failure. So I have to figure out a better way to say it. But I want to continue or restart, if you will, my yoga and meditation practice. For quite some time this year, I was practicing meditation at least 3 times a week. I was practicing yoga at least 3 times a week, and I really felt good. And then somewhere along the lines, I got real busy, was traveling a lot, and it kind of fell by the wayside. So I'm saying right now, and in a year from now, you can all laugh at me because I'm telling you right now, I'm not putting a number on this. I just have to be better at it. So there you go. I'm saying a goal that I already know, and that everything I've talked about the last 30 minutes underlines how this is a poor goal to actually state, but I'm going to state it anyway. I want to continue to develop and continue to get better when it comes to yoga practice and meditation. Leaders, your educators deserve to have a leader who believes in them, who supports them, and who lifts them up when they're down. Right now, they deserve that reminder that they are traveling their own road to awesome. On that road to awesome, we focus on the things we can control and we let go of the things we can't. On that road to awesome, we rise by lifting others, not by pushing each other down. And on that road to awesome, we change the world one conversation at a time. Leaders, I want to work with your schools. I want to work with you and your educators to lift them up, to honor the work they do, and to let them know they are not in this alone. Let's get together. Let's have a conversation. Let's get your teachers back on that road to awesome, to find that love, to find that clarity, and to walk in their purpose. Reach out to us at roadtoawesome.net for your opportunity to bring Road to Awesome to your school. When it comes to the podcast, I've always just wanted this podcast to be different. That was the goal from the very beginning. I didn't want to have the same guests that everybody else had. Now, yes, there's some guest crossover. I've actually been doing quite a bit of the home and home thing, as we call it in podcasting, where, I'm on your podcast, you're on mine. But I've also been bringing in, and I hope you've noticed this, very unique guests that you're not going to hear on most anybody else's, educational podcast. I want to be different. I want to focus on the fact that great leadership is great leadership, and it doesn't matter whether it's happening in the business space, in law enforcement, in entrepreneurship, in education, in the medical industry. There's so many ways that great leadership happens. I just want to bring as much of it to you as I can, because I know that we all can learn from great leaders, no matter where it is that they practice those leadership skills. So to me, growth is really important here on the podcast. And over the course of this year, we've gone from, I think our first month we had, just under 200 downloads to now over 1,000 downloads each month. I will tell you, I have fallen in love with the conversations that we're having. I've fallen in love with those organic discussions. I've made some incredible connections as a result of this podcast. When I first started out, I thought it was going to be a lot of this, me talking to a microphone and you listening to me. In fact, it feels almost weird to be doing a solo episode again, because I have fallen in love with those conversations. There's so much incredible organic content that happens there. I've been connected to so many amazing people, and I'm just absolutely loving it. And I hope you are too. And honestly, based on the continued growth that we see in the number of downloads, I think you do enjoy it. I think we do have, back to something I said earlier, proof of concept. So hopefully we're different enough and unique enough that we continue to see the growth of this podcast. The goals that I have, honestly, are to double our monthly downloads by the end of 2023. So if right now we're at 1,000, what I'm saying is I'd like to see 2,000 downloads a month by the time we get to the end of 2023. Here's one that's a little bit weird, but folks, I have to stop leading into every interview by saying how excited I am and how much I've been looking forward to that conversation. If you haven't picked up on that, just go back and listen to a few of the older episodes. That is exactly how I start every conversation. I got to get better at that. I have to find new and unique ways to start a conversation. Or maybe I just have to get creative when I'm editing and just cut that stuff off so you don't hear it. But that's really not the goal. I want to get better at how I enter into each episode. A final goal that I have for the podcast is I would like to see in 2023 that we have our first paid sponsor. Yeah, I want to start monetizing this podcast. And not that it's going to be my sole income piece. That's not my point. But I do want to see those paid advertisements start to come on. Not that I want to inundate you with a whole bunch of advertisements, but rather that's a next progressive step in my podcast journey. So those are my goals for 2023. And I look forward to December episode, 110 or whatever it'll be, 105, where I can talk to you about these specific goals. And we can talk about where I've had success and where maybe I fell a little bit short of the mark. Leaders, it's so important that you are willing to take a look at the victories that you've had when you're reflecting on 2022. If you're only going to focus on where you've fallen short, you're really not going to grow. You got to learn from the successes. I mean, the whole idea about getting better is about repeating those successful repetitions. You know, when I first started playing tennis, I didn't learn to hit a forehand right on the first try. In fact, I'd made a lot of mistakes. But it's when you start to do it right, you want to replicate that over and over and over. You got to focus on the wins, folks. Don't just focus on the areas where you fell short. You know, have a little fun with the areas where you fell short. I think I've shared some of those with you, but we've got to be willing to take a look at the great successes that we've had and feel good about ourselves. Because if we don't, man, it becomes really difficult to continue to show up as your best self every single day if all you do is focus on where you're falling short. Really, really spend that time congratulating yourself and be successful and be happy about being successful in those areas. My word for 2023. Did a lot of thinking on this one. And what I've decided is that in 2023, my word is going to be finish. You know, I've put a whole lot of things in here that are goals that I want to accomplish. I need to finish. I need to finish launching the mastermind. I need to finish launching the Principals Academy. I need to finish so many other things. And I will. I'm looking forward to it. I will tell you, one of the first things I'm going to finish in 2023 is the relaunch of my book, Road to Awesome. Now, I haven't had a chance to really talk a whole lot about this, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I will tell you that my book, Road to Awesome, Empower, Lead, Change the Game, was released in July of 2020. Obviously, we're early in a pandemic, and I said it earlier about leadership and about those school leaders and how different it is now compared to when I was in the role. You know, the person that sits in the chair now, their priorities are going to be a little different than what mine were. And I've always said that my priorities didn't have to be somebody else's, but most importantly, I want people to know what their priorities are. What do they really care about? What drives them to do the work? Well, recently, we were able to reacquire the rights to Road to Awesome, and we will be re-releasing the book. I don't have a subtitle for it yet. We may keep Empower, Lead, Change the Game. We may change it. I can tell you it's going to have some new content. There'll be some content that did not make it back into the book. A lot of what's in that book is going to remain. But the truth is this. It was an ideal time for there to be an update to that book. There obviously have been some things that have changed. My priorities have changed. The way I reflect on my work as a school leader has changed. The way I reflect on my time as a district leader has reshaped my thinking. The work that I've done coaching districts and individuals across the country has changed my thinking in some areas. And so this has got a little bit of an update to it. Just one little teaser. I will tell you, I'm really hitting instructional leadership hard here. In reflection, the first version of that book, I didn't talk about instructional leadership. I mean, not really, not intentionally. And in this version, I will. So look for that, hopefully by the end of January 2023. And that's one of the things I'm going to finish. We've got to get that done. We've got to get it out. I'm excited about it. So my one word for 2023 is going to be finish. So how about we finish this podcast episode with a pep talk? It's so critical, folks, to be in tune with your goals. You know, as I shared everything that I shared with you today, one of the things that really became clear as I was putting the script together was I don't do enough to stay in touch with my goals. I think a big reason a lot of us fail in our goals is because we lose sight of them. We don't make them visible, or we don't check back in with them. So something I'm going to do this year is I am going to schedule once a month a meeting with myself and my goals. We are going to sit down and we are going to take a look. Where am I in my goals? I want to project forward. I want to project to the end of 2023, and then I want a backwards map. You know, what do I have to do this month to stay on track for that particular goal? What do I have to do this month and this week to stay on track with those goals? So that's something I want to challenge you to do. I want you to really think about what are these goals you're going to create for yourself in 2023, or maybe you're halfway through your 22-23 school year, and you go back and you reflect on your goals, and yes, you've made some progress, and I want you to celebrate that. But what are you going to do intentionally? How are you going to hold yourself accountable for those goals as you go forward? For me, again, hey, it's going to be about having that once a month meeting with myself and my goals and holding myself to that. And I have to finish that. My one word for 2023. Thank you so much for listening to the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Thank you for listening to me kind of rant a little bit today and sharing some of the successes, some of the shortcomings, and just some of the things that are on my mind as we get moving into 2023. Happy holidays to all of you. Have a Road to Awesome day. Thank you for listening to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, brought to you by Road to Awesome. Don't forget, click subscribe, give a review, and share this with somebody who might also enjoy leaning into leadership.